Happy Halloween, everyone! Nick the DM here with more Dungeons & Dragons lore. To celebrate this spooky season, we are taking a look at a powerful undead creature from 3.5e and going over the stats I converted to use in 5th edition. So, let's take a look at the Crawling Head. The Crawling Head appears in the Fiend Folio from 3.5. A crawling head is a horrifying undead monstrosity spawned from the severed head of a giant. Ages ago, the original crawling head was created by a nameless, overconfident necromancer who was, in turn, quickly slain by his creation. Since then, crawling heads have been slowly increasing in number in areas frequented by giant kind. It isn't known if maybe that unnamed necromancer's spell or ritual got spread about, or if it is now a natural occurrence, but all we know is there are more of them. A crawling head's body is a huge bloated giant's head that has grown to an enormous size. A crawling head is actually big enough to be classified as a huge creature, the same size category most giants with fully intact bodies are in. And some crawling heads can even grow large enough to be classified as gargantuan, but the default and average for a crawling head is huge. The jaws of a crawling head are overdeveloped and filled with multiple rows of shark-like teeth. Protruding from what may have once been called a neck is a seething nest of animated intestines, arteries, and veins that allow the creature to slither across any surface and even climb vertical walls, with, quote, surprising and disturbing grace, end quote. The creature's body is studded with the numerous severed heads it has swallowed, each one trapped in a sac just beneath the surface of the creature's translucent skin. Crawling heads can speak common and giant. Being challenge rating 20, crawling heads have numerous skills and abilities at their disposal. The heads beneath the skin of the creature aren't just for show. A crawling head can store a number of heads equal to its hit dice, and in 3.5e that was defaulted as 28 hit dice, but the advancement for gargantuan crawling heads says they can have up to 84 hit dice. Once per round, in 3.5e, a crawling head could absorb one of the heads beneath their skin to either quicken a spell-like ability, heal itself, or grant a bonus to one of its ability scores for an hour. Also, I should mention that these heads are not silent. They screech, howl, and cry out in pain constantly from beneath the crawling head's skin. If a crawling head has 10 or more of these heads stored in it, the horrendous cacophony strikes fear into creatures up to 60 feet away. To collect these heads, the crawling head does a simple 1-2 combo. Grab with the intestine and artery tentacles, and use its Vorpal Bite. And just like the name implies, the bite attack of the crawling head has a nearly identical effect to that of a Vorpal weapon. On a critical hit, the bite takes off the target's head. The crawling head then swallows the severed head, and the next round it is added to the collection of numerous subdermal heads. The crawling head is, of course, undead, and thereby has undead traits, like immunities to different conditions and effects. As the editions progress, those changed. But in addition to having the default undead traits, a crawling head has true sight out to a range of 120 feet, immunity to thunder and lightning damage, and water vulnerability. Water harms the crawling head like acid harms most living creatures. And because crawling heads are very intelligent, this has caused them to choose to lair underground and in deserts to avoid water. I've mentioned the creature's intelligence, but its other ability scores are fairly substantial too, other than its dexterity. In 3.5e, a crawling head's ability scores were as follows: Strength of 30, Dexterity of 7, Constitution was not available because undead did not have Constitution modifiers or Constitution scores in 3.5e, Intelligence of 20, Wisdom of 19, and Charisma of 25. And finally, it has spell-like abilities. In 3.5e, the abilities at the crawling head's disposal were At Will, Animated Dead, Control Undead, Death Knell, Inflict Serious Wounds, Fear, Gentle Repose, Shield, and Speak with Dead. And 3 times per day, Create Undead, Create Greater Undead, Finger of Death, and Wail of the Banshee. And that last one was an Area of Effect Save or Die spell. A crawling head will use its spell-like abilities to soften up enemies before wading in to finish the job with its bite and tentacles. Crawling heads are quite intelligent, and most will take the time to establish intricate layers, complete with magic traps and undead guardians. So that is it for the lore of the crawling head, but I have made some stats for the creature for 5th edition, converting the 3.5e stats to 5th edition with as much accuracy as I can. So let's take a look. Really quickly, the crawling head is a huge undead, which is chaotic evil. It has an armor class of 8, which is pretty low but fairly standard for zombies and undead creatures. It has 266 hit points, or 28 d12 plus 84. It has movement speed of 20 feet and climb speed of 20 feet. Its ability scores were compared to other creatures that have 5th edition stats, compared their 3.5e stats to the crawling head's 3.5e stats, and then looked at what their 5th edition stats were, and then balanced it out from there. So it has a strength of 24, dexterity of 7, constitution of 16, intelligence of 20, wisdom of 15, and a charisma of 19. It has proficiency in constitution, intelligence, and wisdom saving throws. It also has proficiency in arcana, athletics, perception, religion, and survival. Damage immunities: it has immunity to lightning, poison, and thunder. Poison, of course, coming from the undead traits. Condition immunities: immune to charmed, exhausted, frightened, paralyzed, and poisoned. Has true sight out to 120 feet, which means I didn't have to include dark vision, even though most undead have it, because true sight surpasses dark vision. It has a passive perception of 18. It can speak common and giant, and is a challenge rating 20 creature. For its abilities, it has Absorb Head, where any head that the crawling head swallows is stored beneath its skin. A crawling head can store a number of heads equal to its hit dice, which is 28, in this way. At the start of its turn, the crawling head can absorb a number of heads to cause one of the following effects. So I did it as a free action as it was in the earlier editions, but I didn't list it as a free action. It's just at the start of its turn, and it can do one of the following things. It can heal, where it can use 1 or 2 heads, and the crawling head regains 1d8 hit points per head absorbed. So this is a free action, which it combined with the immunities is why its hit points are a little lower than you would think for a CR20 creature, but also with its spell-like abilities and with this healing, which is a free action, with a limited supply, of course, because the number of heads it has will be absorbed. It explains why it has such low hit points, relatively anyways. It can quicken its spell, where at the start of its turn it can expend 2 heads. The crawling head can cast a spell with a casting time of 1 action as a bonus action instead. Enhanced ability: it can use 1 head, and the crawling head can enhance one of its abilities as if using the enhance ability spell. The effects last for 1 hour. A randomly encountered crawling head has 1d4 plus 10 heads stored. It has Cacophony, which works very similar to the Pit Fiend's Fear Aura. The heads stored in the crawling head's body screech, howl, and cry out in pain. While the crawling head has 10 or more stored heads in its body, any creature that starts a turn within 60 feet of the crawling head must make a DC 18 Wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the creature becomes frightened until the start of its next turn. While frightened this way, the creature is stunned, which is similar to how in 3.5e it wasn't just frightened, it was cowering, which is a rank of frightened in 3rd edition. So I just brought that over here as the stun condition. If a creature's saving throw is successful, the creature is immune to the cacophony for the next 24 hours. Innate spellcasting: it has a spell save DC of 19 plus 11 to hit, and it can cast the following spells at will, requiring no components. I just took any spells that were in both 3.5e, and if they had a 5th edition version, I gave it to the creature. If they didn't have a 5th edition version, I wasn't going to cover a bunch of spells for the crawling head. At will, it can cast Animate Dead, Inflict Wounds, Fear, Gentle Repose, Shield, and Speak with Dead. Shield does help its low armor class, because it can either use its reaction to cast that, and it's at will, so it doesn't have to use a spell slot, or of course it can save its reaction if it wanted to do an attack of opportunity. And of course, 3 times per day each, it has Create Undead and Finger of Death. The crawling head has Turn Immunity, where the crawling head is immune to the effects that turn undead. It also has Water Vulnerability. For every 5 feet the crawling head moves in water, or for every gallon of water splashed on it, it takes 3 or 1d6 acid damage. Being totally submerged in water causes the crawling head to take 35, or 10d6 acid damage at the start of its turn. For its action, it has a multi-attack where it can make 5 attacks, 1 with its Vorpal Bite and 4 with its tentacles. Vorpal Bite is a plus 13 to hit, reach of 5 feet, hits one target, does 3d8 plus 7 or 20 piercing damage, and on a critical hit, the bite deals an additional 6d8 piercing damage for a total of 12d8 or 54 piercing damage. If this attack reduces a creature to 0 hit points, the crawling head bites off and swallows its head if it has one. The creature dies if it can't survive without a head. This attack scores a critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20. Now, for a CR20 creature, to balance out how much damage it was doing per round, I wanted to add in that critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20. Plus, that is also how it was in 3rd edition, though a bunch of different weapons and features gave an increased critical strike chance. But in this case, it was just to level out the damage. I also changed it up so it wasn't directly like a 5th edition Vorpal Sword, where it would not immediately cut off an opponent's head at a roll of a critical hit. Instead, just doing the additional damage that a Vorpal Sword recommends if the creature does not have a head. So I've just had it so its bite will decapitate a creature if it reduces it to 0, so there will be no death saves, there will be no going unconscious. It will just be a decapitation if it reduces it to 0, but of course it does it a lot of additional damage. And of course it gets 4 tentacle attacks, which is a plus 13 to hit, reach of 10 feet, hits one target, deals 2d8 plus 7 or 16 bludgeoning damage, and the target is grappled. Escape DC 18. Until this grapple ends, the creature is restrained, and the crawling head can be grappling up to 4 targets at once. So this also balances out the low hit points and low armor class with its higher damage output because it can grapple and get advantage on its next Vorpal Bite attack. The good news is it can only use one of those per turn, and it's not immune to many physical attacks, only lightning, poison, and thunder for elemental effects, so it should be fairly easy to fight. And that is it for the 5th edition stats I made. A link to the stat block is in the description if you'd like to use it. Thank you all for watching the video. If you've enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe to help support the channel. Also, if you want more lore or converted stats, I have lots of other videos you can check out. Thanks again, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.